This is part 2 from inequality. So, the gap of income between rich and poor it's referred to as inequality. Causes of income inequality including urban bias, high inflation, more use of capital intensive technique in production. So measure of inequality, there are different measures of inequality like Gini coefficient, Lorenz curve, range, mean absolute deviation, coefficient of variation. So one by one we will discuss. First, the concept of relative poverty is used to indicate the level of economic inequality of a nation. It is a measure through Gini coefficient. In mathematical term and Lorenz curve is used for graphical representations of the inequality. Gini coefficient it was developed by Italian statistician and sociologist Corrado Gini. It measures the degree of income inequality in a country by calculating the ratio of the area between the diagonal, that is the equality line. This diagonal line it's called equality line, and the Lorenz curve divided the total area of the half square in which the curve lies. This is a Lorenz curve. In this axis, we consider the cumulative share of the population, and in this axis, we consider or here we can say this horizontal vertical portion. This is the cumulative share of income. So the Gini coefficient varies between 0 and 1. The higher the Gini coefficient is, the more is the gap between rich and poor in a country. That is higher inequality. 0 represent perfect equality and 1 represent perfect inequality. A. Which area is A? This area is called A. We can say this area is called A. It's equal to 0. If A is equal to 0, that means Lorenz curve is actually the line of the perfect equality. In this case, the Gini coefficient is 0. It means perfect distribution of income. If A is equal to 1, then that implies the wealth of that country belongs to one person and everybody else is poor. And the Lorenz curve, what is Lorenz curve? This curve is called Lorenz curve, that the half square is divided. This is a half square that is also divided by this curve is called, this curve is called Lorenz curve. If the Lorenz curve is close to this diagonal, then there is the indication of perfect equality. If the Lorenz curve is away from this diagonal, then economy it's an indication of higher inequality. And then what is Lorenz curve? It is a curve that measure the relationship between the percentage of income earned and the percentage of people who earned that particular percentage of income. It is a graphical representation of the Gini coefficient. Now There are different measures on inequality. First one is range. Range is a crude measure of inequality. This means range is equal to maximum income minus minimum income divided by mean income. Mean income, that means there are income level, it's 10, 5, 13, 7. So if we add all this income and divided by this full number, then we get average income. So this is the formula: maximum minus minimum divided by mean income. And next measure of inequality is the mean absolute deviation. Mean absolute deviation, we can say that 1 by n, mean absolute deviation is 1 by n sum of the absolute value yi minus mu. Here is yi is a value of the data point, and mu is equal to mean, n is equal to sample size, and mod of y minus mu is equal to absolute value or absolute deviation. It is absolute deviation. So mean absolute deviation, they measure the variability. Mean absolute deviation was the average distance of the data point from the mean. So in better way we can elaborate that what is the meaning of mean absolute deviation. Suppose we consider different data point like 11, 16, 19, 20 and 20. So this is our data. That is data, first data point is 13, 16, 19, 34, 58. Mean is 28. Mean means if we add them, then get 140 divided by 5. If we add all this value, then get 140. You can check on your own, and then we get mean. Their mean value is 28, so we can write here 28, and just deviation means just subtract from mean data point to mean value. Then we get minus 15. This is a minus sign. These are the minus sign. Just take minus, subtract. And then minus 15, minus 12, minus 9, 6 and 30, and just use mod and get absolute value, that means 15. And minus 12 means 12, minus 9 means 9, 6 and 30. So our objective is to add all this value, plus 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 plus, and then divide by 5. That means we can do that, plus 15 plus 12 plus 9 plus 6 plus 30, we get 72, divided by 5 we get 14.4. 14.4, its mean absolute deviation, it's 14.4. So mean absolute deviation is a measure of variability. And next, the coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation is there. Coefficient of variation is a better measure for inequality. This is unit-free measure. Coefficient of variation is standard deviation divided by mean. So what is standard deviation? Standard deviation is one root of 1 by n sum of yi minus mu whole square divided by mu. Mu means here mean. Mu is here mean. So this gives the higher weightage to the poorer. Coefficient of variation will give us unit free value. Coefficient of variation is a statistical measure of inequality that assumes the dispersion of data points of the mean value. Smaller coefficient of variation indicates a more equal distribution. From the underline, we can say that smaller coefficients of variation indicate a more equal distribution. Next, Gini coefficient. I already mentioned what is Gini coefficient, and in calculation of the coefficients of variation, we need standard deviation. From these values, we can find out the standard deviation. How can we find out the standard deviation? That is minus 15, minus 12, minus 9, plus 6 plus 30. What is the value? From by calculating this value, we get 0. Divided by 5. By any chance, this is infinity. 0 by something. Sorry, I'm making a mistake, that 0 by something, it's equal to 0. But this is an exception case. Suppose we consider that uh, another value like suppose consider data point is 11 and their mean is 11 and deviation is subtract. Standard deviation is equal to, then get mm, so 14 square is equal to 196, and then sum of all of this value, that is 149 425, then divided by a number of sample, or whatever I can say, 5, that is equal to, suppose 100 plus 49 plus 4 plus 196 plus 25 divided by 5, it's equal to 74.8. For standard deviation we just root and then root, so we found out the root over of 74.8 and get 8.64. So how can we find out the standard deviation? We get this value, and not this example but the other example, mu is a mean. So here the mean is, for this math or this uh, example, 11. So we can subs- uh, divide it. Coefficients of variation is 8.64 divided by what was our mean. Mean was 11, then get coefficients of variation. So result is 0.78. If the coefficients of variation are smaller, that indicates a more equal distribution. So 0.78 it tends to 0. So if it tends to 0 or likely to 0, then there is a probability that there is a equal distribution. And Gini coefficient last, it is the account of independence of different income. So Gini value is always in between 0 and 1. The Gini coefficient capture how further Lorenz curve falls from the line of equality. By comparing the area A and B, you can show that this is the equality curve and this is the Lorenz curve. This area is called A and this area is called B. Gini coefficient value is A divided by A plus B. Gini value, it's always in between 0 and 1. 0 means perfect equality and 1 means perfect inequality. In the horizontal axis, consider cumulative share of the population, and in the vertical axis, cumulative share of the income. So here the coefficient measured the dispersions of income or distribution of wealth among the number of the population. The Gini coefficient is the most frequently used measure of the economic inequality.